everybody. The Church of Scientology's UK headquarters, St Hill in Sussex near East Grinstead, have applied for a ban on demonstrations and protests outside their premises in an attempt to scupper our plans to protest outside the IAS event in just a few weeks. The IAS is the International Association of Scientologists. It's an annual gathering, and last year we protested outside the gates of their manor, and we plan to do the same again this year. However, Scientology have applied for what's called a public space protection order, which essentially would make it a crime to engage in any sort of protest or demonstration outside or near the premises. So let's have a little look at the document that they have submitted. Hello, everybody in the chat. Karen is saying hi, Alex, and everybody. What are those sneaky Scientologists up to now? Well, you are about to find out. Mark, the Dorset SP, is here. Hey, buddy, thank you for joining. Going to stay up late for this. Yes, and welcome. Hello to everybody watching on the replay crew as well. So, Mid Sussex District Council, which is the area in which St Hill is located, have what's called a People and Communities Committee, and they are meeting on Wednesday next week, 2nd of October, in a very last-minute meeting to discuss this application that was made on the 15th of July that has only just come to public attention. Let's read through this. Little bit of context before we get into this actually is the Public Order Act in the UK allows restrictions on protests. So, for example, in the UK, you have freedom of speech and you have a right to protest peacefully anywhere you like, as long as it's public land. However, the Public Order Act allows specific restrictions or sort of conditions to be placed on protests in order to protect the public in terms of safety and disruption and that sort of thing. And Scientology are basically claiming that the protest that happened last year was disruptive to their event and it is religious hatred and discrimination and so on. And so they are applying for a public space protection order, which would give the police extra powers to arrest people and stop people from protesting in a certain area outside their premises. So let's read what this says. Let's do this. The purpose of this report is to request that the committee reviews and agrees to the process required to consider a public space protection order request made by Hodkin and Company solicitors, that's Peter Hodkin, Scientology's lawyers, on behalf of their clients, the Church of Scientology of St Hill Manor. The report explains the process in deciding whether to make a PSPO and the reasons why this case should be decided by elected members. The recommended outline approach to the PSPO request has been co-designed with advice from independent legal counsel and key partner input from Sussex Police. The report outlines Mid-Sussex District Council's approach to gathering evidence, resourcing additional operational support, timeframes, and financial implications. The committee are making the following recommendations: to note the contents of this report, to note that the Cabinet will make a decision following appropriate process, and to endorse and recommend to Cabinet to consult on making a PSPO. So to make it really clear here, this People and Communities Committee do not have the power, or they're saying in this case particularly, they don't want to issue a PSPO. They think it's something that the full council should vote on rather than just this small scrutiny committee. So, background. The Church has requested the Council will make an order under Section 59 of the Anti-Social Behaviour Crime and Policing Act 2014, namely a Public Spaces Protection Order. The effect of the PSPO proposed would be to prohibit any demonstrators from conducting their activities on the public highway, St Hill Road, immediately outside the church. The church is requesting that this PSPO is in place before this year's International Association of Scientologists event weekend in October to avoid a repeat of demonstration activities of November 2023. To date, the church have not notified the council or Sussex Police of the confirmed date of the event. Now, I'm just plugging my mouse in because it's run out of battery. So to note here, this was submitted on the 15th of July, but it's only just now coming up on the agenda of this meeting of the Scrutiny Committee next week. Now, one thing to note before we proceed is when I organised the IS protest last year, I did so in coordination with the police, with the council, and I spent a lot of time and energy on making sure we played by the rules, we weren't harassing anybody, we did so peacefully, and I had a lot of liaison with the police beforehand to discuss our plans, where we wanted to stand, what we were going to do, what our message is. They reviewed all the signage and that sort of thing, and there were no arrests made. Nobody was questioned by the police, and there were no reports of harassment or anything like that going on. It was a peaceful demonstration, and it will be again this year, a peaceful demonstration. So this is just all background. However, the Church of Scientology are making the case that last year was horrific and they're blah, 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 whatever their case is. So they're saying that in order to prevent that from happening this year, we need this PSPO in place. It's unlikely the PSPO will be in place to prevent this year's protest because it takes a long time to go through this process, as you will see. However, they are trying to say that they need this to be put in place before the event. But the council have noted that Scientology have not actually told them when the event is in October. The Antisocial Behaviour, Crime and Policing Act of 2014 provides the legislative framework for making PSPOs. Since the introduction of the legislation, Mid Sussex District Council has made use of a range of powers under the Act for issues such as making the PSPOs for dog control and the antisocial use of vehicles. Cabinet agreed to expand the use of these powers on 11th February 2019 to help tackle persistent antisocial behaviour using the community protection notices and the use of PSPOs for ongoing issues in public spaces, such as the antisocial use of vehicles. A local authority can make a public space protection order under Section 59 of the ASB CPA, which is the Antisocial Behaviour Act. If there is a breach of a PSPO, then the offender can be prosecuted or issued with a fixed penalty notice. It has been agreed that the enforcement of PSPOs in Mid Sussex will be conducted by Sussex Police. So what this is saying is once a PSPO is in place, that gives the police extra powers to arrest people and prosecute them for things that would normally not be illegal. So if a PSPO is in place that says you can't demonstrate outside St. Hill, if you then protest outside St. Hill, you can be arrested for that, even though you have freedom of speech and the right to peaceful assembly and protest. If there's a PSPO in place, it becomes illegal to do that in that area. It gives the police extra powers. Legal case law considerations. It is crucial for the council to consider the statutory requirements and relevant legal precedents when making decisions about PSPOs. General points to consider. Ensure the PSPO is not overly broad or vague in its prohibitions. Consider whether less restrictive measures could achieve the same goal. Consider whether a balance is struck between the impact of detrimental behaviours and the measures taken to restrict or prevent them, including whether a balance is struck between the competing interests of different persons who wish to access and use the area inside the PSPO. Evaluate if the PSPO is necessary and proportionate to the problem it aims to address. And assess whether the PSPO unduly restricts fundamental rights, including but not limited to freedoms of expression or assembly. The case also engages freedom of religious belief for persons attending church premises. In summary, the council should carefully weigh the church's request against the legal requirements, potential impacts on the human rights held by all stakeholders, and the need for proportionality. A thorough consultation process and equalities impact assessment in compliance with the public sector equality duty are required to ensure the PSPO is justified and lawful. Consultation, interested parties, and rights of appeal. Section 72 of the Antisocial Behaviour Act sets out a number of minimum statutory requirements for consultation with specific stakeholders. Before putting in place any PSPO, the council is required to consult with interested parties such as the police, community representatives, and the owners and occupiers of land affected by the PSPO. Mid Sussex District Council has been advised that relevant community representatives in this case would include the church itself and also protesters known to be engaged in demonstrations in the area. Council advise, as in legal counsel, advised that in addition to the statutory consultation requirement, given the potential impact of a PSPO of this nature, it would be advisable to conduct wider and further reaching consultation to include the wider public and interested groups. So what this is saying is normally we just need to speak to the people involved, the church and the protesters, but the legal advisors who are advising the council on this have said because this is such an important matter of public and national public interest, and because it's to do with freedom of speech and freedom of protest and all that sort of stuff, they advise going the extra mile in that consultation process before coming up with a decision whether or not to issue the PSPO, which is, I think, a positive thing. Mid Sussex District Council approach. As part of considered and transparent approach, the council has sought opinion from council on the best practice in the area of the law. Powers to make orders. Cabinet decision is recommended. The making of a PSPO is an executive function. The Assistant Director of Communities has delegated authority under the Constitution to make such an order. However, statutory guidance under the Antisocial Behaviour Act advises that elected members should be involved in such a decision, i.e., the whole council need to vote on it, not just this one committee. In considering this case with the potential national and international interest and the need to exercise democracy in the most transparent way possible, counsel, as in the legal counsel, the lawyers, has recommended the matter should be decided following debate by elected members if it is in accordance with Mid Sussex District Council's constitution for the matter to be escalated in that way. The statutory guidance also notes that given the effect of public spaces protection orders is to restrict the behaviour of everybody using the public place, the close or direct involvement of elected members will help to ensure openness and accountability. Therefore, the Scrutiny Committee for People and Communities will consider the matter ahead of a decision by Cabinet to ensure transparency and openness. So, in summary, this committee that are meeting on Wednesday next week will review everything before it is then taken to the full council for a vote. Evidence required to make a PSPO. Examination of evidence. A council may make a PSPO if it is satisfied on reasonable grounds that both of the following two conditions are met. So these are the things that need to happen in order for a PSPO to go through. The first condition is that activities carried on in a public place within Mid Sussex District Council's area has had a detrimental effect on the quality of life of those in the locality, or that it is likely that activities will be carried on in a public place within that area and that they will have such an effect. So Scientology need to prove that our demonstration that happens once a year has a detrimental effect on the quality of life of people in the local area. In addition, the second condition is that the effect or likely effect of the activities is or is likely to be of a persistent or continuing nature, is or is likely to be such as to make the activities unreasonable and justifies the restrictions imposed by the notice. So this one annual protest that happened once last year and is going to happen again this year, they need to prove that this is consistent and persistent in nature. In addition, a public spaces protection order should only include prohibitions and requirements which are reasonable to impose in order to prevent the identified detrimental effect from continuing, occurring, or recurring, or to reduce the detrimental effect or the risk of its continuance, occurrence, or recurrence. Evidence is required in support of a PSPO. There should be an available body of material which gives the local authority reasonable grounds to be satisfied that these statutory tests are met. Recommended approach to observation and collection of evidence. It is recommended that the upcoming event is used for observation of any demonstrations and protests which take place, and evidence gathering by Mid Sussex District Council officers in partnership with Sussex Police. Officers should be empowered to record as much detail as possible of what takes place. If protesters, perpetrators, or victims of any incidents are willing to give their names and contact details, officers should contact them later as part of the consultation exercise. So, to be clear, Mid Sussex District Council here are saying that in order to consider this request by Scientology to ban protests in the area, they need to observe a protest in the area. So, if you are hoping to attend the IS protest this year, please be aware there will be a lot of presence from the council, the police, and so on, just like last year, and they will be looking to assess the impact of our demonstration, and they would like to speak to people on both sides of the story. So if you are joining us in protest at the IES event, please do consider speaking to the council representatives to give them your views and talk about why you're here, what you're doing, and then they can make a fuller assessment of whether to ban the protest activity or not. Sussex Police have agreed to support observation, collection, and sharing of evidence. If a PSPO is considered potentially necessary and proportionate after the evidence gathering exercise, Mid Sussex District Council will carry out a full public consultation. So, after they've observed this year's protest, they will then assess whether it was detrimental to the local community and whether a public spaces protection order is necessary. If they believe that it is potentially necessary, they will then go through this consultation process, which will take months to complete. Public consultation. After the event, Mid Sussex District Council will review the evidence and decide whether or not to move ahead with a wider consultation exercise. The suggested approach is that Mid Sussex District Council consults on a draft version of the PSPO so that consultees are provided with exact details of what is being proposed. Carries out both a full public consultation and direct meetings with the church, protesters, and other interested stakeholders, such as the Residents Association. These meetings can be used to explore whether it is achievable to negotiate some form of mutually agreeable accommodation, such as a set of ground rules to ensure protests to go ahead, to enable protests to go ahead without unduly impacting those attending the church. And just for the record here, last year I sent a number of emails to the Church of Scientology during the planning stage of the IS protest, requesting information and saying, hey, we don't want to get in your way. We don't want to stop people attending your event. And it would really help us if you could give us a little information about when people are due to arrive, how many people you're expecting, and which entrances they're going to be using, so that we don't get in the way and we don't disrupt your event. The idea of the protest is not to cause disruption, but is actually to send a message to current Scientologists that we are there to help them should they choose to leave. We were trying our best to try and have that negotiation and consultation so that we can minimize the impact on the local community and the people attending the event. Those emails landed on deaf ears. I didn't get a single response, and Scientology were very clearly unwilling to negotiate with us to ensure that we minimized that disruption. So if through this process, the Mid Sussex District Council can liaise and be a middleman here to ensure that our plans for future years are made with what Scientology want in mind so that we don't disrupt their event, that would be fantastic, because that's what we want. We don't want to cause disruption. So that's what Mid Sussex are suggesting here. It's also suggested in the approach that Mid Sussex District Council prepares an options assessment which identifies a range of steps which might be taken instead of a PSPO, including less restrictive options to help determine whether an order is necessary or justifiable, and that it conducts a careful equalities impact assessment of the likely effect of the PSPO to demonstrate compliance with the public sector equality duty. Timeframes. The proposed approach for gathering evidence and conducting the necessary procedures for the PSPO are outlined in Appendix A, which we won't get into just yet. That's coming. Policy context is talking about here. It's all due through the Antisocial Behaviour Act. The council's functions here, it's saying how and why they would be able to do it. In considering this case with the expected national and international interest and the need to exercise democracy in the most transparent way possible, officers and legal counsel considers the matter should be decided following debate by elected members. It is proposed that this will be achieved if the matter is considered by the scrutiny committee ahead of the decision by Cabinet. Continued legal advice may be required on the council's proposed approach. Seeking advice could reduce the risk of any challenge. There is no budget for responding to the application for a PSPO. Should either party appeal a decision on the PSPO, a conservative estimate of costs to defend any action is a minimum of £50,000. So, what the council here is saying is that whatever decision they make, they have to be prepared for legal action off the back of that. And there are going to be costs associated with that, which are not in the budget. They didn't expect this to happen. They didn't put money aside to take on this issue of public order and the Church of Scientology. So they're saying if we were to put a PSPO in place, we need to be prepared to fight that in court, and we need to make sure we have the money to do so. And let's not forget, this is public money, taxpayers' money, because it's a council, a district council. Any challenge to a decision on the PSPO would have to be by way of a judicial review or statutory appeal. In either case, this would entail High Court litigation. Provided that the council are careful to follow a robust process and give clear and evidence reasons for the decision, the council should minimize the risk of judicial review being successful. There is a reputational risk to the council if we do not conduct the process of considering the PSPO robustly, proportionately, fairly, or transparently. So the council here are acknowledging the stakes are high, and this is an important issue they need to deal with above board and how in the right way. We talked about the equality thing earlier, and this is some background papers. These are links to different legislations and examples of other PSPOs that have taken place. It mentions here a PSPO made in Bournemouth around an abortion clinic. So just to give you a little bit of context, what of an idea of what a PSPO is like, there are abortion clinics around the UK, and fairly recently, December 2023, a PSPO was put in place around an abortion clinic in Bournemouth because there were protesters who are pro-life getting in the way and harassing people who are going to the abortion clinic, and they were trying to stop people from getting abortions. These protests became quite harassing. They became quite what's the word? I don't want to say nasty, but they did certainly get in the way, and disruptive. That's the word I was looking for. So a public spaces protection order was put in place to prevent protests happening within a certain radius of the abortion clinic in Bournemouth. So they've referenced this as an example of when one of these has taken place. They've also referenced here, officers cannot find any case law relating to PSPOs in the specific context of Scientology. And then it references the lawsuit, which is the one that happened in 2013 that designated Scientology buildings places of worship. The Supreme Court held that Scientology was properly to be regarded as a religion. Now, one thing to note on this is that lawsuit, that legal ruling in the Supreme Court, did change the definition of religion in British law, but the lawsuit was about the buildings, and what the result of that was that Scientology churches around the UK were designated places of worship, and therefore people are allowed to get married in a religious wedding ceremony in a Scientology building. Although it did say that the Scientology does fall under the category of religion, the ruling was about the property. Scientology remains non-tax exempt. It was denied tax exempt status, charity status, by the Charity Commission in 1999 because it couldn't prove a public benefit. They are not considered a charity, a religious organization. Their buildings are considered places of worship, and that's it. It then goes through, this is the timeline here about exactly what this is going to look like. So September, October is when they want to engage with stakeholders before the event, in partnership with the police, highway authority, contact both protesters and the church on the intention to gather evidence at the event, the police to outline acceptable and safe conduct. So that's very similar to what happened last year, but what they're saying is the council are going to reach out to me and the protesters that took place to say, hey, this is going on, this is what we want to do. October, event preparation, initial documentation, and evidence collection. October, dates of the event to be confirmed. The council or Sussex Police are yet to be notified by the church of the date of their event. But at the event, they're going to gather the evidence, including photographs, videos, witness statements, and questionnaires from the event. That will be the Sussex Police and officers from Mid Sussex District Council. Following the protest, they will then analyze and all the collected evidence to evaluate its impact on attendees and the nature of the disruptions. Then they'll engage with stakeholders. So they'll have a consultation with church representatives and local authorities to gather additional input and concerns. And then in December, conducting surveys and interviews with affected attendees, staff, and residents. And then we move into final review, collection of further evidence regarding ongoing issues and disruptions at the church's premises. They'll then compile the evidence. They will then draft an application for the PSPO based on the compiled evidence. Then there will be a public consultation. So they will notify the public and special interest group about the forthcoming PSPO application. And then in January of 2025, they will then have the public consultation, in which case impacted residents and stakeholders will be able to give their say on the matter. They then compile the evidence and then prepare the options in an assessment. So the key here is to identify a range of steps which might be taken instead of a PSPO, including less restrictive options to help determine whether an order is necessary or justifiable. Then they will assess the equalities impact of the assessment and then consult with legal advisors. They then prepare another draft based on all of the compiled evidence, at which point they then submit to the cabinet to vote on and make a decision. And then the commencement of the public consultation, dissemination of information on how to provide feedback and the right to appeal. An assessment of the feedback received during this public consultation will then happen. Then they will communicate with all relevant parties, including special interest groups, about their decision and right to appeal. And then awaiting the decision on the PSPO application, and if approved, it will then be implemented. It then goes on to say this approach is comprehensive and transparent. That's the end of this document. So it's unlikely, it sounds here by what the council is saying, that they're going to ban the protest this year. They need to review, assess and watch the protests this year and then make a decision on whether or not they need to put in place a public space protection order to stop it happening again next year. Now, this is a really, really important issue because what we're talking about here is Scientology applying to restrict people's freedom to protest, freedom of speech, and the right to assembly on public property. They are trying to stifle our ability to peacefully demonstrate on public land. And what they're doing is they're going to review our behavior this year before they make a decision for next year and going forward. PSPOs generally last for 3 years, but there's no limit to how many times that can be renewed. They can be assessed and renewed regularly, and they can and will be extended. There's no end date. There's nothing to say that a PSPO cannot be in place forever. It can be an indefinite thing, but it's initially granted for 3 years. So it's really important that if you are coming to this year's IAS event, the protest, please make sure that you are there for the right reasons. We are not there because we want to disrupt the event. We don't want to stop people going to the event. We don't want to cause any hassle or harass people. We just want to make Scientologists aware that if they choose to leave, there's a community here of people that are willing to support them in doing so, and make sure that we get our voices heard, that we won't stand for abuse inside the organization. We're not there protesting people's religious beliefs. You have the freedom to believe in what you want in the UK. We're just saying you can't treat people the way that you're currently treating people. And if you're not there for those reasons, please don't come. That's why we're protesting this year. That's why we were protesting last year. And that's how we're going to be assessed. If people are unruly, or there's harassment going on, or we don't play by the rules, or people are, getting in Scientologists' faces, then that's all stuff that will work into our detriment. And that will result in protests potentially being banned outside St. Hill. So we need to do what we did last year and lead with compassion and kindness and be there with our smiles on and our best behavior and our best intentions. So if you do want to come along, please bear that in mind. So That's the big document. I will be going to Mid Sussex District Council for this committee meeting next Wednesday, and I will hopefully get the opportunity to make my case. I don't know whether I will have the right to speak at this committee meeting next week or not, but I will keep you guys all in the loop. But we are at the start of a very lengthy legal process that will be taking months and months and likely cost a lot of money. So if you want to support the cause and help me with this, we need to get lawyers and all this sort of stuff involved very shortly later down the line. Please consider buying me a coffee and using PayPal, all of that stuff down below to help me make sure we've got the representation that we need. But nonetheless, at this early stage, it's just us making our case that the freedom of religion is something we believe in, and the freedom of speech and protest and demonstration is what we want to exercise, and we don't want to get in anybody's way. Right, let's look at some of these comments I've been starring. Mark the Dorset SP, if this is what I'm thinking, Scientology can't interfere on Human Rights Act, Article 10, freedoms of expression, and 11, right to freedom of peaceful assembly and to freedom of association with others. Exactly. And that's the point, is this is why the council need to take this so seriously, is that in order to prevent protesting or put an order in place that stops that, it's a very serious thing, because you're talking about human rights here. So they want to do their due diligence to make sure they're doing it right and in the right way. Bok Buddy, last year's illegal Scientology's blocking of public right-of-ways caused the danger. Exactly. Last year, Scientology parked vans along the public right-of-way, and they put plant pots along the pavement, which forced us as protesters and attendees of the event to walk in the road where there was moving traffic, which was quite dangerous. They were obstructing the public right-of-way, and that caused a lot of issues. We as protesters were on the verge. We could move out the way, and we did move out of the way, but the problem is trying to enter that property was hard because of Scientology trying to disrupt the public right of way. Betsy Sue, their annual IAS meeting is consistent and persistent and a detriment to the public. Exactly. There are a number of local residents who made themselves known to me last year and have contacted me since on social media and through email and in person whenever I'm down in East Grinstead, who make it really clear that they do not like the impact the IAS event has on the local area. It jams up all of the roads. It causes a lot of traffic issues in the area, and it caused a lot of disruption to the local community, and they were thankful that we were there representing them and making our voices heard. So that's something definitely to consider, is that the impact of the protest is very minimal, especially when considering the impact of the event itself that has on the local community. Red LN here says Scientology is going to plant alligators or agitators, here we go, along with the protesters. It's what they've done in the US. Yes, this is one thing to also bear in mind, is that Scientology have a habit of trying to infiltrate different protest movements and try and place people amongst the protesters to cause disruption. Because at the end of the day, if there is some sort of altercation or people start doing stuff illegally, or they try and jump the fence and enter the property without permission, or fight or anything like that, that works in Scientology's favor, because it shows that it is for the right for the protection of the public that a ban is put in place. So quite often they have in the past tried to put people in the protest group to try and rile people up and get people annoyed and agitated so that they react in that way. So if you are planning on coming this year, please be aware that that is a very real possibility. And like I said last year, I'll say it again this year, if you feel yourself getting angry or annoyed or agitated, and you're feeling yourself getting kind of wound up or worked up about something, please just take a minute, take a step back, go for a walk, have a breather, and settle down, and then come back in, because we are there to be peaceful, kind, and compassionate. We're not there to get in people's faces or to harass people or anything like that. Last year, they tried to push us into the road, into moving traffic. They got very confrontational on the Sunday. And what we did is just try to step back a little bit. We made sure we had security there. The police were there the whole time. So it is something to keep an eye on, and make sure that we are being protected as protesters as well. Valerie Morgan, hello. All Scientologists up to their old tricks again. Exactly. Mark the Dorset SP, I doubt the council will vote for it as it's a yearly event, unlike Bournemouth, where it was a daily occurrence. Yes, this is one of the cases that, of course, I will be making, is that we're not there outside St. Hill every single day. In fact, we haven't been there since last year. It's an annual event that is accompanied by an annual gathering of protesters. It is not a persistent thing. It's not something that happens every day. The impact on the community is the event, not the protest. Betsy Sue here says they should watch the footage from last year. Most peaceful, loving protest ever. Thank you. And yes, that's one thing to consider. The protest was all live streamed on YouTube, and anybody and everybody can go and watch the live stream and see what they think of how we behaved ourselves. They can hear what we were chanting, what we were saying, how we were engaging with Scientologists. You know, we were complimenting people on their outfits. We were wishing them well and saying, hope you have a great event, enjoy it, keep your credit card safe, but have fun. You know, we were being very kind and polite. And that is some of the feedback we got from the police that were in attendance last year, that we were peaceful and it was one of the friendliest protests they've ever been to, is what one of the police officers said to me anyway. So absolutely, we will bring the same thing, same attitude with us this year. A. Jansen, Scientology are slacking. They could have requested this after last year's protest. Did you think you were not going to protest again? Exactly. Now, this application was submitted apparently on the 15th of July of this year. And obviously it's taken this long for it to get announced and put onto the agenda. And they have been pushing very heavily for this debate to occur just a few days before the event. It's all very rushed. They could have put this in place after the event last year. They also could have requested this years ago, right? Protests have been happening outside St. Hill, outside the IAS event for decades, right? The Anonymous movement, 2008, was a much larger protest than ours last year. It's only this last year that they have stepped up their game, and they are now deciding that we apparently are getting in the way. So it does say a lot that they are now trying to come after us when they haven't done that in the past with a public space protection order. Karen, if Sea Org members would refrain from shoving protesters into oncoming traffic, things would be a lot less dangerous. Yes, and things would be a lot less dangerous if Scientology would refrain from blocking the public right-of-way in the highway with their vans and with their plant pots. That would make things a lot safer as well, wouldn't it? So that's the update from me, guys. The Scientology are trying their best to stifle our plans, and they are trying to stop us from protesting. They're going to try and do whatever they can to stop us from peacefully demonstrating. The event is very soon approaching, so if you are looking to attend this protest, please do send me an email on hello@apostatealex.com and I will share some of the plans with you guys. The website will be up and running very, very soon. It's a very last minute thing, just like it was last year. The date, I'm pretty sure I know when it is. I'm not going to announce it just yet because I'm waiting on confirmation from a few other sources just to make sure that I'm right in my estimation of the date. But we will be there. We will be on best behavior, just like last year, and I'll keep you guys in the loop. But as I said, if you want to support me and what I'm doing with my activism, and you want to help with all the costs that are obviously going to be ensued, I am going to have a meeting with my lawyer tomorrow. I'm also going to speak to a couple of other agencies and people that advise when it comes to protest movements and freedom of speech and that sort of thing, and see what support we can get to help us, because this isn't just a case of Scientology versus protesters. This is a case of freedom of speech and the right to peaceful assembly. So this is something that's really serious, and it will have wide-ranging and far-reaching impacts and implications for the wider protest community that have got nothing to do with Scientology. So it's important we get it right and we approach it in the right way. So any coffees and donations that you can give would be greatly appreciated to help with the costs of that. But I'll keep you in the loop as things progress, and when we need to start getting lawyers involved, of course, I'll let you all know. But thank you so much for joining. That's the update from me. There's a few other things that I'll want to update you on very soon, but I want to keep it short because I know it's getting late. I will probably go live tomorrow with more info. That's it from me, guys. Thank you so much for joining. Don't forget to press that like button, subscribe, comment, all that stuff. It helps push this video out to more people. And yeah, if you want to support, please do comment after the video is over down below, and that helps with the algorithm and all that stuff. But that's it from me, guys. I'll see you on the next one.